Kyle, I think it's time that we revisit something we said 2 years ago.
Oh, Kayla, I told you that in confidence.
No, not that.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. What do you have in mind?
I was talking about AI. It's finally time to revisit the episode. It was our second episode 2 years ago.
That's right. 2 years ago, Kayla and I went on the record and shared our thoughts on AI. Mine are looking great. Kayla's are looking terrible, but we need to revisit AI. I know it's everywhere, but stay with us. This is going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about the perception of AI at work. We're going to talk about objections to using AI at work, and then we're actually going to go into specific, legit, verified use cases we have used or we've seen our colleagues use at work that can help you use this technology more effectively. That sounds pretty fun. Let's get into it.
So let's talk about AI. When
artificial intelligence.
Yes, that AI.
For those listening.
Who else it would be. But yes, so about 2 years ago, we talked about AI and we said, why is AI so annoying right now? And I have to say, I'm like still there.
It's only gotten more annoying.
It's more annoying. I mentioned this at the beginning just to get it out there. I am still embarrassed every single time I use AI. I literally refuse to have it on the big screen at work. I use it in secret, like I'm doing something wrong.
You have to like go to the bathroom, bring your laptop in.
Yeah, literally I'll like sit at the table in the kitchen, be like, nobody look at what I'm doing. It's fine. It's work related, but it's so anyways, before we talk about all that stuff, I'm just curious to identify how your perception has changed. And then maybe we can talk about how the general populace's perception has changed.
I mean, if your perception hasn't changed on anything in the past 2 years, like you're probably not reflecting enough.
Sure,
so it has changed. I think my general sentiment has remained somewhat steady, which is it's going to be a very powerful technology. Mm-hmm. Like all technologies, there's going to be good things that it can do, and there's going to be bad things that it can do. And if you give a technology without training to someone, it's like you give a bazooka to a gorilla. It's like, we're not saying the bazooka isn't powerful. We're just like, why'd you give it to the gorilla?
Sure.
Like, this is going to end bad.
Yeah.
So like anything, a lot of it is not actually about the technology. It's about the change management and the actual implementation and practicality of using the technology efficiently. That has not changed. Now, I do think AI, again, such an ephemeral world, has gotten more powerful. The models are smarter. Yeah. They're attaching to more tools. Just as the technology has matured, we figured out how to use it better. So I do think if you haven't used AI more than you were in the 2 years ago, you're behind. And I feel very strongly about that. So yeah, my understanding of the technology and how powerful it has shifted. I think the underlying kind of change management philosophy has not shifted, and in fact, maybe has gotten worse. And we'll talk about that a little during this episode.
Yes. So let's talk about that.
Well, how have your thoughts changed?
Yeah, I know. Besides being still embarrassed,
I wish we had some clips from that episode. I think you said some things that didn't end up being true.
I don't know what I said. We didn't listen to it specifically because I didn't want to be influenced.
We blacked out after that.
I black out after every episode. I have no idea what I've ever said on this podcast. But no, I think the reality is I think I have a more positive outlook on it in spite of the objections that I still think are valid.
Yeah.
And I think that as a tool, it can be used effectively paired with the greatest tool of all, our brains.
Wow. Deep, Kayla.
But if we use it to replace the greatest tool of our brains,
we end up in a bad spot.
We end up in the bad place.
Why did this turn into like a late night?
I don't know. It had to be like ASMR
hey,
for
folks,
some
you're
reason.
tuned into K-Fan.
So why don't you talk about this Wall Street Journal article that we were reviewing?
Yeah, so we want to start with perception, which is AI now has, I think, been around enough where everyone is talking about it, knows about it, blah, 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 blah. What is the actual perception of this tool at work? And the Wall Street Journal had a really interesting article. Shout out to Lindsay Ellis. The article was called "CEOs Say AI is Making Work More Efficient. Employees Tell a Different Story." Yep. Great headline. Great headline, Lindsay. So go read that. Some really interesting stats in here. And I think the TLDR of this article is that the higher up you are in an organization, the more impactful you think AI has been to your workers.
Of course.
And the actual workers don't agree with that perception. So 40% of workers said that AI saved them no time. 40%. Only 2% in the C-suite said that AI was not saving anyone time at their organization. So big difference there.
Yeah. No, my thinking here is that you used a slightly different word.
Okay.
Which I think is the answer,
Okay.
right? So when you are thinking about all the potential possibilities of AI in the like macro,
Yeah, like at your company, in the world, you're like, of course this would help.
Of course it's saving people time. And when you're using it, you're like, beep, bop, boop, write me a strategy doc, and then you're sending it down. You're not the one that's doing the actual work and actually using
Yeah.
the AI tools.
Yes.
So of course you think it's saving you time because you're not having to
use it. AI is very sexy and appealing at an ideas guy level.
Exactly. Because it's great for ideas guys.
As an ideas guy myself,
right.
I'm like, dude, AI, oh, watch out.
Right.
As someone who has to implement, execute that, then you're like, okay, rubber meets the road. Does this actually work or not? And spoiler alert, we are going to get to some specific use cases that do work. But I think you're spot on. The idea guys are in their prime right now.
Yeah.
They're loving life. To your point, Lindsay also identified this survey that Workday did, and they've called this the quote-unquote AI tax. So 85% of the roughly 1,600 employees that Workday surveyed said, AI is saving me 1 to 7 hours a week. Pretty good. 85%, some savings. Again, different from this other survey that I just referenced. So they were a little more AI positive. However, the net effect was very interesting because they also said that much of the time that they saved was actually offset by then working with people who weren't using AI efficiently and having to kind of combat AI work slop. And so even if you are finding actual use cases that are saving you time, not everyone at the company is using it effectively. And so net AI isn't saving any time because you have to deal with all the BS that's coming out of people that don't know how to use it.
Yeah, but I also think that if you're trying to think of, am I saving time? Okay, let's see. You have something that is super annoying. It takes you 10 hours a week. You have now outsourced it to AI, and AI does it in 33 seconds. Fantastic. You've saved 10 hours a week, right?
Yeah.
Wrong. Because then you have to review the work that AI does. And maybe that takes you 8 hours. Maybe it takes you 1 hour. Maybe it takes you 11 hours, right? Like when you're going through and you're like, it saved me 10 hours, but the amount of work that I'm doing to make sure that the work that it's doing is correct is going to also add some of that time back. So I could totally see this perception being like different than reality depending on what your thoughts are on AI itself.
Yeah.
Because I would be much more willing to be like, AI has saved me 10 hours a week and not mention the 6 hours it's costing me if I was more pro AI.
I also think we have just over-indexed the kind of rating of AI to this like time-based thing.
Yeah, I think
like
you're totally
we've over-indexed how much time does AI save you, and I think that framing is causing us to think about AI in a very like sloppy way, which is like, I used to do this and it took 10 hours. AI does it, done in 1 second. I saved 10 hours, which is like not what work is. Work is about like the quality of the output. So the question I would say is like, has AI helped you produce higher quality work? To me, that is the most interesting question. And I think the answer for me is 100% yes, but it hasn't necessarily decreased the amount of time I'm working. It has been this co-pilot, that I still have to monitor and I have to understand how it works. And I'm still working just as much. It's just I think the output has been higher quality because I'm using a technology that can do stuff that I can't do. That's
so interesting to me also, though, because I think that you're right. And I think that if we wanted to, like, in good faith, argue if AI is good or not, we would be looking at both. But I think the fact that AI is being touted as this opportunity to replace people's jobs, to make people more productive, therefore, time saved, time spent, whatever, is like the only metric that matters when we're like, oh, I've saved 10 hours, therefore I can take somebody else's job or I can fire somebody or whatever. So I think it's an interesting element that maybe hasn't been discussed enough is like someone with AI could spend the exact same amount of time on a task and it would just be that much better.
Right.
So it's like that to me, if we could optimize for that, I'm 100% like way more positive about AI.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I said it, so I agree with it. But yes, I think it's underdeveloped and I think it's a better framing because people then aren't like, oh, I'm going to lose my job to this thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to do better work because of a technology that's available to me.
Yeah.
That's something that's more easy to rally around than like, this will save you so much time. And then it's like the meme where you're like, and what are you going to do with that time, CEO? And they're like, nothing. And you're like, what are you going to do with that time?
Right.
They're probably going to try to lay people off. And companies have done that and then found out, oh, yes, it saved us time, but the quality is lower. I'm using Klarna as an example. Famously fired a bunch of people saying we're going to replace them with AI.
Right.
Had to hire them back. Duolingo said we're going to replace a ton of contractors with AI work. Their headcount actually went up. Not saying that they're not producing better output, but that is what I think we actually should be measuring. And I think that's why there's this gap in perception and kind of this scaredness to use it because it's all focused on time efficiency.
Yeah. And even when we're talking about like management generally, when you're setting metrics and strategy for a company, like the big thing to focus on is like what gets measured gets managed.
Yeah.
And it's like if all we're measuring about AI is the like easy number of time spent or time saved, like that's what's going to get managed. And if we're trying to optimize for output and quality, we're not going to be focusing on that. We're going to be focusing on hours saved. So of course the quality is going to be shit.
Yeah.
So that is actually a very interesting point.
I think the other thing on perception that we should address is AI means everything.
Yeah.
Like you just say AI and no one questions it because no one really knows what that is. And you're just like, yeah, AI, totally. It's all AI. What does that actually mean? And I think that is the key to change management, to using it effectively, is to like drill down into very specifics. Like what part of this is an LLM, AI, generative model? Which part is just like a zap that you could have done pre-AI?
Yeah.
And my working theory, and I include myself in this, is that AI became such like this buzzy thing that a lot of people got really interested in it and then started exploring tools that existed before AI, like N8N and Zapier, and like finally we're like, wow, this is really powerful. And like all the people that were using it before is like, we were always using this. This is not AI. You just got excited about efficiency all of a sudden.
Right. And started exploring efficiency tools.
Exactly. And that's great. But it's just like recognizing that a lot of this stuff, when I talk to like people way smarter than me at this company that are like IT and tech enthusiasts, they're like, yeah, this is helpful. Don't get me wrong. But like a lot of this stuff is automations that we could have done in the past. And there's definitely some new capabilities. So being like a kind of non-techie, I would say, like person prior to getting into AI, I have to understand that like I'm probably just saying a lot of shit that could have been done in 1996.
Yeah. That's very possible. So.
No, it is true.
Yeah, sure, it's true. All right, so should we talk about objections?
Yes. So we talked about perception. Let's talk about objections to using AI. And I think there's tons that are, anywhere from not legitimate to legitimate, but there's tons of objections that you hear people cite often for not wanting to use the technology. What are some you're hearing, Kaila?
Yeah. Okay. So I have 4.
Okay.
And then let's go through them. I think this is the one that we've talked about the most. We've actually received the most inbounds about, like emails, concerns, questions about AI use is environmental impact, energy use, water use, data center development. So I feel like this is probably one of the strongest, concerns around AI usage. What are your thoughts there?
On data centers? Yeah, I'm not an expert. I've read the opposite argument like a million times. One, you can read something and it's like, this is draining the world of every resource imaginable. And like every query you do, like Lake Superior disappears. And I'm like, gotta stop doing that. Yeah. And then I read something that's like, no, like each query is like drinking a glass of water and like that it's fine. And so I literally
a glass of water per query is still a lot. That's right, crazy.
Like,
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? Though.
Yeah.
And so like legitimately, like I feel like I've read deeply smart people talk about this and come to very opposite conclusions. So I'm not sure. What I think through synthesizing this is like, yeah, I think data centers suck up a lot of power. And I'm not sure we can blame like big data centers on like individuals querying ChatGPT. I think it's probably much more of a systemic thing where these companies have raised insane amounts of capital. They need to deploy said capital, and collectively, if you add up all the queries, we need to power them. So data centers have to be built. So it does feel like it's like, oh, climate change is happening, which I totally agree with. Stop taking flights. And it feels like at the individual level, That's the issue. Like, it doesn't feel actionable to me on an individual level. That feels like something that's like, no, we need to like elect officials that are thoughtful about this, have the right policies in place, because this is, if it is a problem, a systemic global problem, not an individual, I'm going to stop using AI. That's personally how I feel.
Yeah. So sure. And I also, I think you're right. And I think that when we're talking about like energy consumption, impact to the environment, it's like everything that we do has energy consumption and has an impact to the environment. Like you mentioned flights, 100%. Like, is the answer to take fewer flights? Maybe, but like, that's not realistic. People aren't going to be like, well, I don't want to, impact the climate, so I'm not going to fly somewhere. What I think, unless you're taking a train, which you should do, the Acela.
Shout out to trains.
But I think, so I have talked about this in the past where I view AI now kind of similarly to how I view my impact on the food system. So like, I'm an individual that eats. Shocking. I know, big news. And like, as is everyone else. And like, there are individual actions I can take to reduce my carbon footprint based on the food I eat, and waste, because I do that as well. I try not to, but like, that's like the individual level, right? So if we're thinking about how is AI like this, like, let's say the food system, like not eating meat on Mondays is this like individual.
No meat Mondays.
Right. Is the individual action that reduces, when taken collectively, reduces, carbon emissions because there's less demand for meat. In the same way, like you can take individual actions to reduce AI usage that maybe requires less strain on data centers if that's something you're concerned about. Uses less energy, pours out less water, whatever. I believe it's that the water is used to cool the computers and the data centers, whatever. And then there's the collective action, which for me is, donating to climate, whatever, food security stuff, to understanding which politicians are advocating for policies that I agree with. It's the same thing with AI.
And one more thing about this particular objection is, I think the way you view this objection ultimately comes back to, do you think AI will be a net positive or a net negative on society? If you think AI will be a net positive and increase productivity and unlock, new drugs and do all this great stuff, well, we have resources on Earth to funnel them towards societal positive things. So I think it's very easy for you to say, I think AI will be positive. So therefore, yes, we should use resources to use AI. Makes sense to me. If you think AI is negative, just, we're doing dumb shit and like it's promoting work slop and like it's not actually going to help anyone, then why would we be using resources to drive it? So I think that really is what it comes down to. Like, if you think it's good, use resources, and net, it'll all pan out and it'll work, and it'll unlock additional resources we're not even sure exist now. And if you don't like it, you're going to be like, why are we wasting any time, resources, or money on this?
Yep. I think that is a good point. And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show. Objection number 2 is no thinking.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I think your brain atrophies when you rely on AI to outsource all of your thinking. And I think that is like something that we've talked about at length. I don't like how AI reduces friction to the point of friction not existing. When you're using it for like, write my essay. Yeah, it'll write a shit essay. Like, you could do that.
It'll write actually a pretty damn good essay.
Okay, fine. It'll write a fine essay, but like, and maybe you'll get a B on it or something. But like, you're not thinking then, and then your brain stops freaking working, and it's like crazy to me. So that is my biggest objection from the like individual use angle.
Like writing is one layer abstracted from understanding, and that's why in college they have you write stuff. So you have to like slog through and understand it. And with AI, you can get to writing without understanding, and so you're missing that critical layer. However, like I do think that AI in some ways is like, it depends on how you're using it, almost like the ultimate learning tool. And Google just released this whole like learn anything. It's like built for learning. And in some ways, it's a tool that amplifies and accelerates your curiosity and actually helps you understand better, obviously sans hallucinations. And so to me, it comes down to how you're using it. And I would say, if you have an objection that AI is causing us not to think, and you don't come with that same energy on like TikTok,
I'm there.
I know. I'm just like, then again, I think it just comes back to, I have this objection because I think AI is bad. So I don't want it. I don't want it. So here I'm going to throw objections at it. If you're on TikTok, like that is pure brain rot to me.
Yeah, 100%. But I think so is AI. Like I am anti TikTok. Granted, I use it.
I think if you used AI for 2 hours a day, or you use TikTok for 2 hours a day, and you measure it at the end of a year, and I see your face because you're going to agree with me.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you
no,
are.
I'm not.
I know it in your soul. And then you measured how much you learned. Like it wouldn't even be close.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I think all things can be bad though. Like it's like I think they're both. Like I would rather like what if okay, yeah, those two things, or reading a book for 2 hours a day, you know?
Of course. Yeah, reading's great.
So like I think it's sure, maybe TikTok is worse for brain atrophying, but that doesn't mean like that means AI is now absolved of the atrophy potential.
Totally. My whole point is like any objection, it's like what you're deciding to get really energized in be against, which is your personal choice. I'm just saying like it tends to be something that's a little more deeply, I don't want this to exist, period.
Right. Versus this is the data.
Yeah, exactly.
I do agree there.
But I think that's a very good objection, which is you have to use it responsibly. Because if you're using it in a bullshit way, like you're going to get dumber. It's going to be harder, like going back to the perception, it's going to be harder for your colleagues to even work with you because it's just pure slop 24/7. And that's definitely a big fear. Like it's just creating slop into the world.
Yeah, I agree. Do you have any objections?
I don't have any like smart objections. I think the energy one is something that like matters to society. Yeah. Very, very great to be focused on that and make sure like that doesn't get out of control. And then I think the thinking is probably my biggest one on like a personal company-wide level. Like you can use the tool, but it doesn't replace thinking and doing the work. Right. Like anything. Like, yeah, you can have AI produce a deck in 5 seconds. The deck is fine. We're not in the business of fine. Right, it has to be great. So like you still have to have some energy putting into it to curate the experience and make sure it's good. Those are my 2 big objections. Yeah. Do you have a secret hidden third one?
No, I have 2 more, but I think I'll just go through them very quickly because I want to get to use cases and actually talk about them. Okay. One is, how AI was trained is, on us, right? On the internet, on IP, on copyrighted materials. And I know that's been a big back and forth. And it's like, that's bad, right? Like to be able to completely replicate an artist's work pretty much accurately because of the way that the internet has been scraped, like to me is a concern. Yeah. And one that I wouldn't try to do that because that is icky to me. But like it has been trained on all of like human internet existence. So like we have basically created AI. Yeah. But like that's not necessarily a reason to not engage with it in those non-IP breaking ways.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very thoughtful critique and 100%. Like if it, I mean, it has documented like.
No, it didn't do that.
Stole IP to get trained. And then also like the whole like do this in the image, like similar to that feels like I just don't know if there's a model that they've thought about that can compensate people fairly for the work that went into training it. So totally, I think that's a very valid critique and one that we like, again, kind of is like a societal thing. Like there's laws, right? Like shouldn't people who do laws be helping solve this?
I mean, that's a bigger question.
I'm no genius, but those people who do laws
should be doing the laws.
Should look into this.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about use cases and tactics. Okay. These are, for me as an AI skeptic, places where I have actually found value in using AI. Okay. And the first one I would say is when you think first. That's important. So I feel like as a thought partner-ish, like it's fine. I think when you're like, I don't know what to do, can you just do this for me? That's when then you're not going to be going line by line looking for exact, making sure that the quality is what you need. It's just a lot easier to just like take what they write as face value and move forward. And that's when work slop happens. So for me, thinking first is important. Here's an example. I'm pitching an event to Devin, who is my boss. President Devin Emery.
President of the United States.
Of the United States.
Yep.
And I am looking to get him excited about this event just as I am. I created a document that is like why we should have this event. And then I copy and pasted it, put it into Chat GPT, and I was like, poke holes in this document. Yeah. what are your questions? What's missing? What do you think Devin would be like, I need more information or pushback on? And there was like, yeah, most of it was like kind of like, oh no, it's not really relevant right now. We're in the early stages, blah, blah, blah. But there were a few things where it was like, you can strengthen your argument here. And I was able to make some changes that I think have made this a really strong document. And I mean, we don't know yet because I'm presenting it later, but I think it's very compelling now. And so that was super useful.
Yeah.
What are some of your use cases?
I think that's great. And also brilliant. Like I love your tactic and use case there. And David Epstein, our favorite author, my favorite author, who wrote Range, has a newsletter called Range Widely. And he actually did a bunch of research on what are the most effective ways to use AI. And that's the exact conclusion he came through. And he was legitimately like training to be a scientist. All he does is read research. It was the people that think first and then use AI are getting better outcomes. If you just like use AI without thinking, you're actually worse than like not using it at all. So the data backs you up. Well done.
Good.
Another use case that I've used at Morning Brew that I found to be very effective is a subject line optimizer. So we send a bunch of newsletters, and the goal for the newsletters is to get delivered to the inbox and then for someone to click on them.
Right.
That helps us make money.
Yes.
So we want our subject lines to be something that's enticing and people click on, and obviously like that actually are true and deliver, it's clickbait that delivers. And so what we did is we used data that we have on the back end about clicks, and we did a bunch of data analysis around it and like figured out, okay, like what do we know about subject lines that help people click, that get people to click? And we built all of those rules, and then we took those rules and we made a custom GPT that you take a draft of a newsletter and you put it into the GPT, and the GPT then, based on what's in the newsletter, will come up with the subject line based on all of those rules. That's the most likely to click. And there's like a ton of research around like what makes an effective subject line.
Right.
One, just for an example, is like the shorter tends to be better. You get too many characters, it's not effective. So it has a bunch of these rules in it, and it spits out two options that it thinks best, and ultimately the editor or the writer selects the one. Why I think this is a really powerful use case is you can't tell if a subject line was written by a human or AI because they're already like 3 or 4 words and pretty like, it's like not normal human language. So I think there's a thing where people perceive that AI is like slimy. They don't want to know that you used AI. So in this case, like no one knows them. Well, I guess I just exposed it.
Yeah. So now everyone
knows. So I think that's really good. The second is like the like margin for error is very large. Like it's not like we accidentally hit the nuclear switch.
Right.
It's a subject line. So like it's going to be pretty good, and humans like can't keep all of those rules in their head. Robots can. And so it's one where like the robot just kind of has an advantage, and like if it messes up, there's still a human in the loop, and like how is it going to mess up that bad? Like it's 5 words and an emoji.
Yeah, the editor looks at the two, says I don't like either of those, and comes up with their own.
So there's still a human in the loop. The editor is still using human discernment, human judgment to catch any massive errors, but literally like I've had an editor quote unquote say like, that was my least favorite thing. I finally finished writing the newsletter. The last thing I want to do is like come up with a clever subject line. I'm tired at the end of the day. I used to dread it. Now this like I just pick one. That's really great. So that is a legitimate use case I've seen.
That's great. I mean, yeah, I think I agree with that one. It seems like a really good way to take data and like that you could not possibly remember every single time.
Yeah.
And turn it into like options, not guaranteed, required. Another thing, my second use case that I think is very useful is rote tasks. So I haven't gotten into all the like agents stuff where it's like they go into your documents and input your stuff or any like that.
Yeah.
Like my husband's working on that stuff, and I'm always like, I would never
keep the agents out of this house. Like, they're gonna need a warrant for that.
I'm like, you're telling me it'll like update an Excel sheet based on what like something on the internet? Like that's crazy talk. Like that's level like 8. I'm on like level 2.
Yeah.
So I maybe I'll get there eventually, but as of right now,
we'll do an episode in 2 years.
Yeah.
Talk about agents.
But for example, something I needed to do recently was I needed a list of every single day in 2027, what date it was. So Thursday, January 1st, and like an additional category, right? Like Mondays are day 1, Tuesdays are day 3, whatever. That's not true because that would be crazy. Where's day 2? But you know what I mean? And so I just asked ChatGPT to create a list with those parameters. It gave me a downloaded file. I was able to copy and paste it. It was something that last year I had to do as well. It took me genuinely, we're talking about time saved, 7 hours for something that I ended up having errors on. This one, it took me 5 minutes, including checking for errors.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it was like saved me an entire day of my life where I was just like had to like put in a podcast and hope that I didn't like copy and paste Thursday wrong, you know? So like that was something where it was genuinely better than what I could have done and genuinely faster.
Yeah.
And so that's something that like, why not, you know?
Yeah, I think that is a perfect example. Like the stuff translating data has been really, I think, powerful. And we talked about this on a previous episode, giving me a lot more like confidence that I can use, like I can like figure out a formula in Excel because I can talk about it with a little AI bot. So that's been very helpful. I found like custom GPTs like the subject line optimizer where you're on the back end giving very explicit instructions in uploading documents that keeps the AI like in some guardrails. So you have more confidence in the output. I think Notebook LM is also another great tool that really only does focus on the documents you give it. And so if you're doing large analyses of like, you know, a journalist example is like public doc filings from companies. They file with the SEC and you want to analyze like the last 100 years of their documents. Notebook LM is a really great way to do that where like a human just can't do that level of analysis. And Notebook LM will tell you exactly where it's finding what it's telling you, and you can click in and check the source.
That's cool.
So like that, again, it's like another way to save a lot of time, but also higher quality output because now you redeploy that time into insight, analysis, deep thought on that problem. The last thing I want to say here is like we could go back and forth and list a bunch of use cases. The biggest issue I see is that people are like using AI and then trying to find it's like a solution to a problem that maybe doesn't exist. I think like the best people I've seen use AI are not forgetting about other tools. They're not forgetting about change management. They're not forgetting about discovery questions with the group you're trying to solve a problem for. Like you have to put the problem first. And I think anytime you're trying to like use AI, ask yourself, what problem are we solving? And then go down the tree. Like, does this actually require AI? Is it more just automation? Is it a human in the loop? I think we're getting very excited about AI and we want to use it everywhere. And that's creating this work slop. Still, like the basic fundamentals of business and like identify the problem to solve has to stay at the forefront.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest takeaway I hope everyone takes from this, which is like it's not for everything. It's not a cure-all. It's also like there are some serious objections. And the best way to use this is like with discernment.
Yes.
You know, and like with your brain.
The discernment. Nice word.
Thanks.
That's what the Jesuits are all about. I went to Marquette University for grad school. Talked a lot about discernment. It's important now more than ever. Yeah.
Didn't know.
Shout out to the Jesuits. They're really ahead in the AI game.
Perfect.
Should we roll the credits?
Let's do it.
Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Channel. Okay.
Jim Orso is our audio engineer.
And our president is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew. Shout out to the Jesuits.